Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about a king from early Scotland who had a really wild and dramatic life. His name was Amlaíb, and he lived more than 1,000 years ago, back in the 900s. Even though you might not hear much about him in school, his story is full of battles, family rivalries, Viking connections, and power struggles that sound like something out of a movie. Amlaíb mac Iluib died in the year 977. He came from one of the most powerful royal families in early Scotland, known as the Alpinid dynasty. His dad, Ilob mac Custantin, was also a king. Amlaíb had two brothers, and instead of the crown always going from father to son, their family had a system where different branches of the family took turns ruling. That might sound fair, but it actually caused a lot of problems. People were always fighting over who got to be king next, and these fights often turned deadly. One interesting thing about Amlaíb is his name. It doesn't sound completely Scottish. It actually sounds kind of Viking. That's probably because his mom might have come from a Viking family, maybe even related to famous Norse rulers from Dublin, like Amlaíb Cuaran or Amlaíb mac Gofraid. During that time, Viking and Gaelic cultures were mixing together a lot, especially around places like Dublin. It was common for people to have names from both cultures. So Amlaíb might have been one of the first kings in Scotland with a name that mixed Norse and Gaelic styles. When Amlaíb's dad died in 962, you'd think one of his sons would have taken the throne. But nope. Instead, a man named Dubh mac Mael Colum, from a different branch of the family, became king. That didn't sit well with Amlaíb's family. One of his brothers, Cualan, fought with Dubh and finally became king in 966. But just 5 years later, in 971, both Cualan and another of Amlaíb's brothers were killed. Historians think they were attacked by people from a nearby kingdom called Strathclyde. After that, Dubh's brother Cinnaid took the throne. Now here's where things get really confusing. Some records from Scotland say Cinnaid became king after that, but old Irish writings say Amlaíb was king at that time. Those Irish sources don't even call Cinnaid a king. They just refer to him by his dad's name. That's a pretty big clue that Amlaíb was in charge, at least for a while. So it's likely that Amlaíb actually managed to take the throne from Cinnaid even if it didn't last very long. Some historians believe Amlaíb and Cinnaid might have even shared power for a little bit, but if they did, it didn't last. Amlaíb probably seemed like a big threat to Cinnaid, and eventually, Cinnaid killed him and took full control. What's really wild is that all this was happening during a rare peaceful time in Scotland. The Vikings had stopped attacking, but instead of peace, the royal family started turning on each other. First it was Dubh and Cualan fighting in the 960s, and then it was Amlaíb and Cinnaid continuing the feud. While this family drama was happening in Scotland, big things were going on in England too. In 975, King Edgar of England held a huge meeting with 6 other kings to show off how powerful he was. One of those kings was probably Cinnaid, but Amlaíb's name wasn't mentioned, which might mean he had already lost the throne, or was no longer alive. Not long after that big meeting, both Edgar and Dyfnwal, the king of Strathclyde, died. Things got really messy and confusing after that. That chaos might have been the perfect moment for Cinnaid to get rid of Amlaíb and become the only king. There are even some stories that say Edgar gave Cinnaid a piece of land called Lothian if he promised to support Edgar. If that story is true, it means Cinnaid had some strong allies on his side. Amlaíb's story shows us just how unstable the royal family was back then. It wasn't just about being born into the right family. You had to fight for the throne and make smart alliances. After Cualan died, Amlaíb clearly tried to keep their family in power. Even though he didn't rule for long, his life was full of action and drama. From his Viking background to the battles for the crown, his story is a powerful example of how hard it was to be king in those days. So even if Amlaíb isn't the most famous Scottish king, his short time in power gives us a fascinating look at how dangerous and intense royal life could be back then. He was part of Scotland's bigger story of becoming a united kingdom, a land where different cultures mixed, and the fight for the throne never seemed to end.